And we'll start the presentation. Okay, welcome everybody again. If you're joining the call as a recording, we've got a few of the folks of the Pride, and we're going to start a little presentation called All About Design. Give me a second, and we'll get this sucker rolling. And I really wanted to pull out all the stops and make sure I really took some time. So I really tried to make sure at least the intro slide was entertaining and really showcased my best design for you guys. So here we go. All right, I got a laugh. That's what I was going for. Okay.
It's so good.
So
good.
The font debate begins.
Oh, it's so
starting
good.
where all discussion should start at Comic Sans, All About Design, and the wonderful, wonderful color selections. But
Nice.
seriously, though, we're going to go to All About Design, and that's a little bit better. I hope you guys agree. That's okay if you don't. As we go along here, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I am often looking off to a different direction because I've got two screens going on. Just for the purposes of anybody tuning in on it, of course, I'm Eric Huber, partner and chief creative officer and founder of Blue Zoo Creative Agency, sorry. And what I'm just going to kind of got to do is not just about design, but our whole philosophy on design. So really, when it comes to graphic design, I've been teaching at the New Design School for several years now, and I've been very interested in the entire process of creativity. Also, as a graphic designer, you know, when I first started, it was just like, oh, I got cool software, and I'm going to make flyers, and I'm going to do brochures and posters, and it was really cool, and I didn't really understand. I was just trying to make stuff look good, and I was trying to communicate a message. And that's where I was focusing everything on. So as things have evolved, what I've discovered and what it seems to be, there's so many of us graphic designers and creators in general we're musicians, we're artists, and so on and so forth. But at some point back in the past, we were told maybe you can't make money doing that on a regular basis. So let's go get a steady paycheck doing graphic design. And for all of us who started our own business, we're like, where did that come from? Steady paycheck. So when it comes to graphic design, the whole idea is we want to inspire someone somewhere to do something. And this can go back all the way. Anybody recognize what that photo or that image is of? Some of the, go ahead.
It's in France.
Correct. It's the Lascaux cave paintings. And this is what they've determined, and whether it's entirely true or not, but what they believe is these cave paintings were done to teach the other people what to hunt for, how to hunt, where to target them, there's pictures of groups of people. So they were trying to communicate. Now, this is art, but it was meant for something, to communicate an idea. And when we're looking at design in general, like this one is trying to get someone to join the World Wildlife Federation, I believe, WWF. They say, okay, so it's so simple. It's just a photograph, but with a little type treatment, a separation, and you've communicated a message of something that's scary and something that's even more scary. And that's what I found really fascinating. It's like, how do we communicate those images? You know, in the United States, we're kind of limited in some of the things that we can show, and depending on our community or our personal belief of what we think is acceptable to create. This one's a little more harsh. This is a whole idea of texting and driving, or talking and driving. There's a whole series that they did, and it's pretty gruesome. It's just blood coming through a phone because the other person gets killed while driving and being distracted. It's one of the biggest problems we have on the road right now. And of course, you got to have cats because we're doing internet stuff. So, but this one is the same thing. It's like you see a difference with a difference between a cat that based on its owner. One, the same cat, and different, being taken care of in a different way. Graphic design helps that. We've got photography, we've got words, we've got layout. So all those things combined really makes for getting someone somewhere to do something. And that's kind of the entire idea that I really want to communicate for anybody doing creative work. We're trying to get people to do something. Of course, sometimes we're just trying to get them to buy, something from a customer, shoes, tacos, I don't know, can be anything. So going on to the creativity in general, what I discovered was I started doing a ton of research on just creativity. And I think I mentioned this before, when they talk about people who are creative, we make connections that other people can't make. And here's a great quote I found. Creativity is just connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. This is Steve Jobs. How many of you guys, someone comes up and says, wow, that's really amazing. How did you think of that? And you go, well, I mean, it was just there. I didn't know. It wasn't hard. I don't know how many, I think most of you are a lot better at pricing, but one of the things that I noticed as graphic designers and creative professionals in general, we undercharge what we're worth because it's not hard for us. I'll take $20. I spent 3 hours on this, but it was fun. And, now most of us, I think in our particular group, we're a little bit better at that. But I remember those days where it was like, that's okay. It was just fun for me to do. You can just have it. And then that's not really an equal exchange of services there. So one thing that I saw with Creative Connection, though, a lot of us will study stuff, and we'll look at stuff, but without us actually trying to do the work, we miss out on the actual work. And so what I'm trying to show is we get a lot of knowledge, we learn a bunch of stuff, but it's not until we start making all those connections and doing the work that we get the experience, and our brains actually start making those solid creative connections that we can use over and over again. And then we can start seeing a lot more things that other people can't see. I'm not trying to separate us out. I'm just saying that we're focusing on creative solutions all the time. Now, that being said, there is that whole problem that sometimes the connections we make aren't really real. The moon is not made of cheese, but it kind of looks like it, How many of you guys have heard of John Nash, the Nobel Prize winner for economics? There was that movie, The Beautiful Mind.
That was a good movie.
Yeah. So he was asked at one time that, how as a logical person could he possibly believe in this illogical nature of these bizarre delusions? And he said, well, because the ideas I had about supernatural beings came to me the same way that my mathematical ideas did. So he took them seriously. So that's the one thing about our creativity that we have to watch out for. And it's great to have people next to us to keep us in check. It's, ask them if they see you, start talking to people in midair, to just, check in with you. All right. I just wanted to talk about that part of creativity because it's stupendous. It can be a little off a little bit, but overall it's something to keep in mind. All right, how many of you guys are familiar with Gestalt principles of design? Ooh. Nobody?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to teach you a little bit. So they're really, it's just a few. There's only 5. But the first one is it's simplicity. The association of similar shapes clustered together can create something that seems to be unified whole. As you notice, the eagle head has got triangles in it, the sun spokes. We actually got 11 objects here, but they create what looks like an eagle head with a behind or in front of a radiating sun. All right, so basically this is an idea by have simple images near each other, you can create, this is kind of what a tangram is. Continuation, any kind of, this principle is basically you create motion that leads a viewer from one point to another so that they focus on the second object. In this case, it's a leaf blowing through, it seems to be a leaf blowing through an H. This is called continuation. Closure. This is where you have shapes that may not close, but our minds go ahead and create the shape, the edges, and fill things in. I think probably the best, you can talk about negative space and positive space. I think probably the biggest thing is Everybody knows the FedEx logo and the arrow in the logo, and most people don't see it at first. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. They created that shape within the
I
logo.
remember when I first noticed that.
Yeah. Where were you when you first noticed the FedEx arrow? All right, number 4 is proximity. When we have separate items that are not close together, we don't associate that they're part of the same thing. These seem to be something separate, whereas this seems to all be part of the same deal. So that's proximity. And the last thing is figure and ground. That is when you're working on the shape of something that's in the foreground and something that is in the background. So depending on your perspective right now, you're either seeing a shade being pulled or you see a face within the shade. And that's your figure ground.
I see both
Good.
simultaneously.
Left brain, right brainer. That's good. All right. So let me ask you a question. What shapes your creative work? Anybody?
The initial limitations.
Good.
Collaborative conversation with the client.
Okay, good. Mark's on the call. Welcome, Mark. All right, I'm going to throw out a few other things. Let's talk about everything. Everything shapes your creative work. Your mindset, your beliefs, the friends that you have, the hobbies that you have, the lifestyle, where you live, your socioeconomic, everything around you shapes your creative work. If you were living in another country, either India or perhaps in Mexico, your creative work would be almost completely different because of their particular beliefs, lifestyles, the way their culture is. I left off culture. And also your resources. We can be great creatives with a pencil. We can be great creatives with, an iMac and 7 billion terabytes worth of, photos and so on and so forth. Billions. Now, the reason I say that, because one of the biggest things for creatives is I really want you, it says all about design. And this is kind of not just graphic design. When it comes to design, everything around you influences what you design. The things that you saw this morning between getting up and getting on this call could influence yes, even from your bed to your chair. I'm just saying. You can be influenced. Now, I will include a link here shortly, but I was going to show the video, but it's too long to include in this too. There's a great video, and it talks about subliminal advertising. Have you guys ever heard of Darren Brown? There's a video. He basically takes these 2 ad executives who are creatives. He brings them into a room. He basically gives them half an hour to come up with a logo, a name of the company, and a tagline, or what he calls a strap line, because they're in England, I think. Long story short, the guys spend half an hour. They come up with 2 ideas. They show it to him. He pulls this envelope, which he had left in the room at the very beginning. He pulls out, he doesn't touch it. He has them pull the envelope out. And when they open it up, it's almost exactly what they came up with. What he did was, when they picked up the ad execs from their offices, they took them along a certain path and put all these visual stimuli in between them and when they walked into the room. And this bear is part of the business model they wanted to have. It's a taxidermy. It's a passion, he says. But long story short, it's about a 6-minute video. It's a great little watch. It kind of blows people away that just you can't believe that you can be that influenced. So just like us seeing people or subliminal advertising for things that we buy, we can be influenced by every single thing that we see. And so it's important what you focus on, but it's also important to see many possibilities and see other viewpoints. And so that it just makes for your design to be a lot better. Now, how many of you guys have heard about the 5,000 hour rule to become a master at what you do? There was some science done a while back that for artists, for musicians, for so-and-so, all these creative, anything you want to learn, it takes about 5,000 hours. That's about 2.5 years of 40-hour week, just pouring your, focus in on this. And pretty much by that point, you're known as kind of an expert in that particular field. So that's great. I think everybody has now disproven that you don't have to take that long. You can go to the sources. You still have to do the work so that you understand how it's done a lot of time, but you can understand concept. Have anybody read any of these 4 books? Okay. So, and you guys might not be readers. You might like to listen. You like watch videos about it. But these are 4 books that I found really interesting. The Talent Code was worth that 5,000 hours. He actually breaks it down and figures out a way to not take that long. You can actually do things a lot faster by what you focus on and how you ignite the excitement about learning a specific area. Twyla Tharp, The Creative Habit. You guys have heard of the Behance Network, I'm sure. Those guys wrote a book called Making Ideas Happen. And it's a great book as well to show you how to focus and work through projects and get them done and set aside the things that aren't important. What was interesting is I was reading Twyla Tharp, The Creative Habit at the same time, and guess what? She does exactly what they recommend doing. So some creatives who are successful are already following a certain pattern. If you can follow that pattern, it can help you too. And basically a quick breakdown is when you have a project, you set the goals, you set the steps that you have to do, and as you're going along, you move things either into a resource or a back burner. So you need something to refer back to, or you have a great idea and you want to explore it, but you better put it on the back burner because it's not going to get you to your goal. And that's what a lot of creative people who constantly get the work done. Ogilvy on advertising, that's just old school stuff. I just highly recommend the book. You can get it in the library. And then there's Creative Confidence. It's a wonderful book too. So going back to the old stuff like Ogilvy, I'm kind of a big believer in see what other people have already done, but you don't have to copy it. Now add your own ideas. A prime example is, has anybody ever seen this ad before?
Sure.
It's kind of a classic. It was, the whole Ogilvy approach was you give somebody an image that's engaging, it's interesting, or at least makes them look for a second, and then you put a headline that kind of throws their brain off a little bit. Sometimes they have a sub-headline that goes into more detail, and then you give them a couple of columns worth of information. Actually, research showed that if you got somebody this hooked, they proved they would put a 5-column text newsprint page on the right, and people would read all that if they were interested in that first page. When I read that, I was like, it sounds like what they're talking about with long sell copy on websites that people will keep reading if they're wanting to. So look at this ad. Couple of little changes, couple little extra words. I think we just got a website now. We got an interesting picture, we got a headline, we got a couple of columns of text, just throwing some navigation, move their logo to the top. So if you look at some of the old stuff that worked, was proven to work, you can come up with some even better ideas. And that goes back to that creative connections. Make the connections that were already there and put a different spin on it. So really, all about design and all about creativity, what I really want to throw down to everybody is you need to look at more stuff. This will help you make more connections that other people can't see, or just they don't notice it. And if you design with a purpose in mind, you're trying to get someone somewhere to do something, you're going to be successful. And that consistent work will set you apart from everybody else over time. And then of course you got to throw in a little Comic Sans and have some funs. Have some fun. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you. And if you go to slideshare.net/Eric Huber USA, it's got this slideshow in it already for you guys. Questions, ideas, comments? Whoops.
I just wanted to mention that something I thought of at the very end of the presentation there. I first realized my passion for design by finding flaws in others' designs. Like, looking at some big ad campaign or a logo or something, you're like, what were they thinking? And, why is that a bad choice? What about it makes it not good. And that's when I realized, like, I kind of got something built in that, you know, says, hey, and comments on what I'm seeing. And that's kind of how my approach to design has been. And
I love starting with the bad ideas first and just get them out of your head, because sometimes they lead into some better ideas and you go, oh, well, I can't print those words in public, but these kind of are funny and I can do this now. And yeah, it comes up with some new ideas. So yeah, that's so all about design, guys. I mean, you know, you may have been expecting tutorials. No, you guys can get, there's way too many tutorials out there that are way better than what I could come up with, and without Comic Sans in them too. So has everybody seen Comic Sans New? Go Google it. There's a Comic Sans New, N-E-U-E.
of course.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
Why Comic Sans New?
Somebody liked it, and they went. Did you find it, Aubrey? Oh, okay.
Needs to go away forever. Forever.
That and Papyrus.
Oh. I know.
She found it. She found it. It's in the chat window for you.
We were choosing restaurants. We went to Eureka Springs yesterday with some friends, and I almost did not want to go to this one restaurant because I clicked on their menu on their website and it was all in Papyrus. I was like, oh.
Okay, I have to know what was the restaurant?
Local flavor.
Yeah.
we
Really good
got a
food,
chance to do their site, and they went with somebody else.
Oh, really?
It's too bad. They have a really good. They have a great design aesthetic in
Yes.
the restaurant.
Yeah, I love the building, and the patio's lovely, and the food was great. We still went. I got over the Papyrus and went.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, any questions or other comments about design, or something you'd like to hear about a little bit more, and I can set up some other time to do that. Or if you want to shoot me a message or something like that. I love teaching. I love sharing information. And I've often been told not to share stuff as much as I do, but I just can't help it. But yeah, the creative identity class I teach is all, and I thought about doing that here with the Pride too, but it's pretty deep, and there's a lot of homework. It's like we're all pretty busy as it is right now. But
I do like hearing about the philosophy bits, because that's something that's, you know, I just work, I just do projects, I'm just like doing all the practical stuff, and I didn't go to school for design. So I think to stop and think about why, you know, I may be actually following some of the philosophy stuff without, you know, just subconsciously, but thinking about, you know, why that makes sense to me that I'm doing what I'm doing. And, you know, the making connections and that sort of thing. It's just not something I think about on a daily basis, just doing my job. But I think I like, you know, moving forward and incorporating that, especially when talking to clients. I think it's important to sometimes to give them a little bit of depth and not just, well, I thought this looked good, you know, or whatever. So
yeah, never say that.
Yeah. Well, I don't, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, and it's easy. It's easy to do that too. Just like you said, it's like, well, I just thought, you know, this would be cool, and I feel yeah, that's great. You can do that. I think the first time it made connection, I didn't get a graphic design education. I got an art degree, and which is still beneficial for being creative. But the thing that got me, I was always trying to justify what I was doing, so I do research. So I'm really bad about doing research and throwing out, well, according to blah blah blah, and everybody's like, I believe you. Why are you telling me this stuff? Of course, they didn't believe me when I was 15 years younger. Necessarily, they wanted to know what. I don't think that's a good idea. It's like, well, I just did all this research. I know it's a good idea. But yeah, that's one of the things. If you flat out, I think the first time that I realized that is I had a guy on the spot say, "Yeah, I like that logo. What was your reasoning for making it that way?" And I just started talking.
Yeah.
And he walked off, and my buddy looked at me and goes, "Is that true?" And I was like, "I think it is." Because I just said stuff, but it was what I really believed, and I hadn't consciously thought of it. But when somebody put me on the spot, I could actually describe the creative process. So,
Right.
yeah. So you're not far off. I mean, you're making the create. That's what I was saying. Those creative connections. You guys are doing stuff that other people just don't always do. I mean, everybody's capable of being creative, but they don't keep doing that kind of stuff all the time. So yeah, cool. Well, I think I've gone over time. Mark's probably rolling his eyes going, Eric, you're supposed to be off by now.
All right.
So I'm going to stop recording. Thank you all for attending.